What just happened in Canada has left the entire world stunned, especially the United States. In a move that no one saw coming, Canada just dropped a massive bombshell that's sending shockwaves straight to Washington, D.C. And guess who's at the center of it all? None other than former President Donald Trump. Just as President Trump rolls back tariffs on most products from Mexico and Canada, Canada is making it clear their retaliatory tariffs will stay in place until those U.S. tariffs are gone for good. In a bold move, Canada has unveiled a massive $760 billion plan to fight back, surprising even the European Union. Rather than simply absorbing the costs of Trump's tariffs, Canadians, both businesses and everyday consumers, are taking action. From small local shops to major supermarket chains, people are shifting away from American products, turning instead to homegrown goods or European alternatives. Online stores that focus on Canadian-made products are seeing a surge in searches as consumers look for ways to reduce reliance on U.S. imports. But Canada isn't just reacting, it's adapting. The country is actively strengthening trade ties with other regions, particularly Europe and Asia. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, with the EU has given Canadian businesses better access to European markets, and the numbers show it's paying off. Since the agreement took effect, trade between Canada and the EU has grown by 7%, with a new wave of Canadian businesses taking full advantage of this shift, reducing their reliance on the U.S. And now, Canada is playing an unexpected card: energy. Starting tomorrow, Canada will cut electricity exports to 3 U.S. states, a move that could drive up prices and put pressure on the power grid for 1.5 million American customers. Premier Doug Ford's message to Americans? Blame your president. Canada's natural resources, oil, gas, and electricity, are now strategic assets in this economic standoff. In 2023, Canada supplied over 50% of the U.S.'s imported oil. But instead of relying solely on the U.S. market, Canada is expanding its reach. Asian countries like Japan and South Korea have started importing Canadian oil and gas, giving them an alternative to Middle Eastern energy sources. The newly expanded Trans Mountain Pipeline is another game-changer, allowing Canada to sell its oil to Asian markets at higher prices than what the U.S. typically pays. This trade war isn't just about economics. It's reshaping the future of North American relations. The U.S. now faces the risk of an unstable energy supply, while Canada stands firm in its response. We are retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact on the U.S. while minimizing the effects here at home, a Canadian official stated. And we will keep them in place until the Americans show us the respect we deserve. But beyond trade and tariffs, this conflict has sparked something deeper in Canada: nationalism. The U.S.'s aggressive trade policies have not only threatened Canada's economy, but have also united its people like never before. Canadians, known for their peaceful and cooperative nature, are now rallying to defend their national sovereignty. Even Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has seen a surge in popularity as citizens rally behind his government in this economic standoff. Canada's political landscape is shifting significantly, with leaders and citizens alike recognizing the importance of reducing dependence on the U.S. The government's strategic pivot toward trade partners like Japan, South Korea, and the European Union is already showing results. This shift is not just a reaction to U.S. tariffs. It's a long-term plan to establish Canada as a more independent economic force on the global stage. The impact on the U.S. is becoming clear. Canada's retaliatory measures have hit the American industrial sector hard, with 14,000 jobs already lost. Could this be the beginning of a larger economic storm that shakes the foundations of American industry and employment? As the 30-day temporary tariff pause comes to an end, tensions between the two nations have slightly cooled, but the conflict is far from over. Canadian political leaders are not just looking to ease tensions. They're actively strengthening ties with Europe and Eastern partners, ensuring that Canada never again finds itself overly reliant on its southern neighbor. The question remains, will the U.S. recognize this shift and adjust its approach, or will the rift between the two nations continue to deepen? One thing is certain: Canada is no longer just reacting. It is taking control of its own economic future. The coming months will reveal just how far this transformation will go. Trump's provocative remarks spark outrage in Canada. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's recent statement suggesting that Canada could become the 51st state has struck a nerve among Canadians, prompting strong reactions from political leaders and citizens alike. Many see his remarks as an insult to Canada's sovereignty and national values. leading to a wave of responses emphasizing the country's independence. Canada's response: a nation unites in defiance. The backlash has been swift, with political figures holding press conferences and delivering speeches reaffirming Canada's autonomy. However, beyond official statements, the Canadian public has taken matters into its own hands, channeling frustration into decisive action. Social media boycott movement. A powerful online campaign emerged almost immediately, with the hashtag #BoycottUSA going viral. Millions of Canadians joined the movement, expressing national pride and a firm stance against economic dependence on the U.S. real-world actions. Many Canadian families have responded by canceling planned trips to the U.S., choosing instead to support local tourism and businesses. This collective effort highlights a strong economic stance, prioritizing domestic growth over cross-border spending. Symbols of national pride. Across the country, a resurgence of patriotic sentiment is visible. Campaigns like "Canada is not for sale" have gained traction, while Canadian flags are being proudly displayed as a symbol of unity against perceived foreign encroachment. Economic impact on the U.S.-Canada's reaction isn't just symbolic. It's having real financial consequences for American industries. Decline in Canadian tourism to the U.S. Canadian airlines, such as WestJet, have reported a 25% drop in bookings for U.S. flights, forcing schedule adjustments and reducing flight availability. Billions in lost revenue. The sharp decline in Canadian visitors is estimated to have caused $2.1 billion USD in losses for the U.S. tourism industry, leading to approximately 14,000 job losses. The effects are being felt across multiple sectors, from hotels and restaurants to retail and entertainment. Ripple effects across industries. The tourism slump is also impacting broader supply chains. Hotels, restaurants, and retail stores are seeing fewer international customers, triggering economic ripples that could take time to stabilize. The bigger picture: Canada-U.S. economic ties under strain. Canada and the U.S. share a deeply interconnected economy, with trade between the two nations reaching approximately $1.2 trillion USD annually. Key industries, such as energy, automotive, metals, and agriculture, are built on this relationship. However, even minor disruptions can send shockwaves through both economies, affecting prices, supply chains, and employment. If tensions continue to rise, both countries could face significant economic consequences. For now, Canada's message is clear: sovereignty is not up for negotiation. A global lesson: when the supply chain breaks. Canada's reaction to Trump's remarks is more than just a political statement. It's a wake-up call. In today's interconnected world, every economic and political decision has ripple effects that extend far beyond national borders. This situation has forced the U.S. to reconsider its foreign and domestic strategies. A warning sign of economic turbulence? Is Canada's counteraction just the beginning of a larger economic storm? And how will the U.S. respond to these unexpected disruptions from its closest neighbor? U.S. dependence on Canadian energy, a hidden weakness. Did you know that the U.S. is heavily reliant on Canada for its energy supply? But what if, one day, that energy flow was cut off? The consequences could be severe: skyrocketing oil prices, factory shutdowns, and consumers facing overwhelming energy bills. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It's a real possibility. Let's explore the critical role Canada plays in powering the U.S. and what could happen if this energy relationship were disrupted. The U.S. energy lifeline, Canada's crucial role. Despite being the world's largest economy, the U.S. depends heavily on Canada for its energy stability. Here's how. 1. Oil supply, the backbone of U.S. energy. Canada is the largest oil supplier to the U.S., accounting for about 60% of its oil imports. This steady flow of crude oil is essential for keeping American industries running and ensuring fuel prices remain stable. 2. Natural gas, keeping America warm. Canadian natural gas is vital for heating homes in the northern U.S. and fueling industrial operations. Without it, winter months could become even harsher, both for households and businesses. 3. Hydroelectric power, a lifeline for U.S. states. States like New York and Vermont rely on hydropower from Canada, particularly from Quebec. This clean and affordable energy source is a key part of the U.S.'s renewable energy strategy. If the supply were disrupted, these states could face an energy crisis. 4. Uranium, powering U.S. nuclear plants. Canada is also a major supplier of uranium, which is crucial for U.S. nuclear power plants. Without Canadian uranium, America's nuclear energy sector could experience serious setbacks. What if Canada cut off energy exports? If Canada were to halt energy exports to the U.S., the consequences would be devastating. Oil prices would skyrocket, impacting transportation and manufacturing. Factories could shut down, leading to mass layoffs. Energy bills would soar, putting financial strain on American households. Renewable energy strategies would be disrupted, slowing progress towards sustainability. The U.S. and Canada's energy partnership is more than just trade. It's a pillar of economic and energy security. Any disruption to this relationship could trigger far-reaching consequences for both nations. As tensions rise, the big question remains: how will the U.S. navigate this fragile dependence? What if Canada cut off its energy supply to the U.S.? Canada's energy exports are vital to the stability of a U.S. economy. But what if Canada suddenly decided to stop supplying energy? The impact would be severe and far-reaching. 1. Skyrocketing energy prices. If Canadian oil and natural gas exports were cut off, U.S. energy prices would surge overnight. The cost of heating homes and powering businesses, especially in the winter, would rise dramatically. Higher energy costs would also push up production expenses across industries, leading to inflation and increased living costs. 2. Industrial crisis and economic slowdown. Energy-intensive industries, such as steel, chemicals, and manufacturing, would struggle to cope with higher prices. Many factories would be forced to reduce production or shut down entirely, resulting in widespread job losses and economic downturns. 3. Energy shortages and supply chain pressure. The U.S. would need to scramble to find alternative energy sources, but reliable and affordable options wouldn't be easy to secure. Energy shortages could disrupt supply chains, impacting everything from transportation to consumer goods. 4. Canada's shift to new markets. If Canada redirected its energy exports to Europe or China, it would take time and significant investment to build new infrastructure. While Canada would face challenges in making this shift, the U.S. would be left dealing with immediate economic instability. The bottom line: a disruption in U.S.-Canada energy trade would have devastating consequences. Energy prices would soar. Key industries would suffer. Supply shortages could cripple the economy. This energy partnership is crucial, and any disruption could reshape the economic landscape of both nations. Canada's bold move, challenging the U.S. on trade. While the U.S. remains locked in trade disputes, Canada is seizing an opportunity, and Washington may not be ready for what's coming. At a recent NATO and EU summit, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made it clear: Canada is ready to compete directly with the U.S. in Europe. This isn't just diplomacy, it's a strategic economic shift. Canada's direct challenge to the U.S. For decades, the U.S. has dominated NATO's economic partnerships, but now Canada is stepping in with aggressive trade negotiations. Trudeau's visit wasn't just about alliances. It was about securing deals and expanding Canada's reach in global markets. Could this be a turning point in global trade? And more importantly, how will the U.S. respond? Stay tuned as we break down the potential consequences in the next segment. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has sent a clear message to Europe. It's time to reduce reliance on American suppliers and explore alternative options. And who is that alternative? Canada. Confident in its ability to compete, Canada has outlined several advantages that even the U.S. cannot ignore. With a modern and highly reliable manufacturing industry, stable and abundant energy resources ready to step in when needed, and a booming aerospace sector gaining global recognition, Canada is positioning itself as a key player in the global market. At the core of this strategy is the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, between Canada and the European Union. This deal isn't just another trade agreement. It's a gateway for Canada to secure deeper access to European markets. If Canada manages to redirect even a small portion of Europe's supply chains away from the U.S., the impact will be significant. A shift of just 5 to 10% of trade from the U.S. to Canada could result in billions of dollars in losses for the American economy each year. But the implications go beyond financial losses. Such a move could weaken Washington's global economic influence, particularly within NATO, where the U.S. has long been the dominant force. What makes this even more striking is that the U.S. may not have seen it coming. Trade analysts are now questioning whether Washington underestimated Canada's strategy. Faced with this challenge, the U.S. has two clear choices. It can increase trade incentives to keep Europe loyal or impose tariffs and trade restrictions on Canada to slow its momentum. However, both options come with significant risks. A strong reaction could push Europe toward Canada even faster, while doing nothing might result in the gradual decline of U.S. influence in global trade. Europe's response to Canada's proposal has been notably receptive. Diversifying supply chains has long been a priority for European nations, especially amid ongoing trade tensions with the U.S. Canada offers a stable and reliable source of energy, making it an appealing alternative. Strengthening economic ties with Canada also gives Europe greater leverage in negotiations with both Washington and Beijing. If Canada's strategy succeeds, it won't just be seen as an extension of a U.S. economy. It could emerge as a powerful, independent global trade leader with strong connections to the world's largest markets. This isn't just a bold step forward for Canada. It's a serious warning sign for the U.S. If Washington doesn't adjust its trade strategy soon, it could witness the slow erosion of the global economic dominance it has maintained for decades. The shift is already underway. In just 1 month, U.S. product sales in Canada have dropped nearly 20% as consumers reject American goods in favor of locally made products. This backlash is a direct response to harsh U.S. tariff policies, including Trump's 25% tax on most Canadian imports and a 10% tariff on energy products. While the Canadian government condemned these moves, the most significant response has come from consumers and businesses. The impact is now spreading beyond Canada, disrupting global trade relationships. Canadians have responded swiftly and decisively. 85% of consumers now prefer Canadian-made products over American imports. This shift is transforming shopping habits across the country. Supermarkets prominently display signs urging shoppers to buy Canadian, and the Buy Beaver app, which scans product origins, has surpassed 35,000 downloads in just 2 weeks. American imports, including food, cosmetics, clothing, and household goods, are disappearing from store shelves. Even the auto industry is feeling the effects, as sales of Toyota and Honda rise while Ford and GM struggle to maintain market share. Businesses are adapting just as quickly. Canadian farmers and manufacturers are ramping up production to replace U.S. goods, while retailers are restructuring supply chains to prioritize domestic and international alternatives. Online marketplaces are experiencing a surge in demand for Canadian products, further reducing reliance on American imports. This is no fleeting protest. It's a permanent economic realignment. And Canada isn't alone. Around the world, trade partners are reassessing their dependence on U.S. goods. In Europe, countries like Germany and France are reviewing trade agreements to limit reliance on American products. Multinational corporations are seeking alternative suppliers in Canada, Asia, and South America. Global investors are taking notice, driving renewed confidence in Canadian industries. China, seeing an opportunity to challenge U.S. economic influence, is moving aggressively. Beijing is strengthening trade ties with Canada, increasing imports of Canadian goods, and encouraging Chinese companies to invest in Canadian businesses. As new trade deals between Canada and Asian markets accelerate, they are bypassing traditional U.S. influence and reshaping global trade patterns. For U.S. companies, the impact is undeniable and growing. Major brands like Coca-Cola, Apple, and McDonald's are already reporting declining revenue in several key markets. American exports are experiencing sharp drops as nations seek alternative suppliers. Stock market analysts are warning of long-term consequences for major American brands as the global trade landscape undergoes fundamental shifts. With these changes, businesses have no choice but to adapt. Canadian companies are restructuring their strategies to capitalize on the movement. Brookfield Asset Management, one of Canada's largest investment firms, is scaling back U.S. operations, while TFI International, a major transportation company, is strengthening trade relationships with Europe instead of the U.S. Other industries are also adjusting. Canadian airlines are shifting international routes as demand for U.S. travel declines, while tech and manufacturing companies are forming new partnerships to boost exports beyond the American market. Meanwhile, Canadian energy firms are securing deals with Asia and Europe, further reducing their dependence on U.S. trade. American companies are scrambling to contain their losses. McDonald's, Starbucks, and Walmart have already closed multiple locations in Canada. U.S. law firms and banks are losing contracts as Canadian companies withdraw from partnerships. In a bid to regain Canadian market trust, American businesses are reevaluating pricing strategies and supply chains. What started as a trade dispute has now evolved into a fundamental shift in the balance of power within global markets. The U.S. is facing a reality it didn't anticipate. Canada and other nations are forging new economic paths, and Washington's grip on global trade dominance is beginning to loosen.